Welcome, everyone. This is Sarah from QSMA's Community Support Department. We're so glad to have you join us for tonight's College Panel Webinar Series presentation. In this series, our panelists will share their college experiences and advice that can be helpful for all members of the SMA community. Thank you so much to our presenting sponsor, Genentech, for generously supporting this series. We appreciate all of the questions we received in advance of the webinar, and we'll try to answer many of these throughout the next hour. You'll also be able to submit questions throughout the webinar using the questions box, which you'll find located in your GoToWebinar toolbar. Please note that all lines will remain muted during the webinar other than for the speakers. If you have any additional questions after tonight's panel, please contact QSMA's community support team at communitysupport@qsma.org. We would now like to welcome our panelists, Amber Bosselman, Kyle Harris, and Kevin Schaeffer, who will be starting today with a brief overview of their college experiences. Kevin, we'll start with you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin Schaeffer from Cary, North Carolina. Happy to be here today. My pronouns are he, him. And just a little bit about my college background. I went to North Carolina State University, which is very close to where I live. I graduated in 2016 with an English degree. And yes, I endured all kinds of jokes about being an English major, especially at a school that was predominantly engineering. But I'm now doing something with that degree, so I get to rub that in everyone's faces now. But yeah, I really enjoyed my college experience. I did live at home all 4 years, actually 4.5. I did one extra semester. And so I'll talk more about that later on. But yeah, really happy to be here today and to get in all these topics about college.
Wonderful, thank you. And Amber?
Hi, my name is Amber Bosselman, pronouns she, her. So excited to be here with you guys tonight. I have spinal muscular atrophy type 2, and talking about college and the college experience and navigating that with SMA is something that I'm really passionate about, so I was really honored that QSMA reached out. I did attend college outside of state. I went to school in Idaho. I attended Brigham Young University, Idaho, and studied psychology and got my 4-year degree there. Graduated in 2019, so I've been home for a couple years, and now I am building a business as a certified life coach, coaching people with disabilities, and I love it. It's a wonderful line of work. So I just am honored to be here and look forward to all the great discussion we're going to have tonight.
Fantastic, thank you, Amber. And Kyle.
Hey guys, I'm Kyle Harris. I attended University of, well, I have SMA type 3, and I attended University of California, San Diego, studying cognitive science, specializing in design and interaction. And since nobody knows what that is, design and interaction specialization is basically kind of studying the kind of where people and computers meet. And so basically using that to apply to how people use technology and making it easier to use, which actually applies to people with disabilities if you want it to. And so that's kind of what I'm focusing on. I actually started out at community college. I went to MiraCosta College before UC San Diego. And yeah, I'm hoping that my perspective as a community college student will give perspective for some of you tonight. So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to answering some of your questions.
Great, thank you all so much. Hello, everybody. This is Colleen McCarthy O'Toole with QSMA's Community Support Department. And a huge thank you to Kevin, Amber, and Kyle for sharing these great introductions. For the rest of tonight's session, we're going to go ahead and go over many questions that have come in from our attendees, as well as questions that have come in advance. So the first question that we have is, what was the most important criteria that you had when choosing a school? And we'll go ahead and start with, should we start with Kevin, Amber, and Kyle?
Okay, sounds Kevin? Good. Yep. By the way, I forgot to say in my intro that I have SMA type 2. But for me, so as far as choosing a college, this dates back to high school. To tell you how much of a nerd I was then and still am today, I did a writer's panel while I was still in high school, a writer's workshop camp type thing that was actually at my alma mater. So I was doing this for 3 summers in a row when I was in high school. And yeah, it's as nerdy as it sounds. It was a bunch of aspiring writers like at this basic camp that was at NC State for a couple weeks. And so I really loved it there. And that's what initially sparked my interest in NC State. So that alone, and because I was already in the building where I knew the humanities classes would be, so I already got a taste of the accessibility there and the campus and everything. So that alone sparked my interest in NC State. It was always my top choice from that point on. I did apply and get into some other schools and looked at some other ones, but the big things for me was that I was looking for a school really close to home because, and I'm sure this will be a topic to come up through the rest of the night. But you know, this is all a matter of what fits your needs and your interests. Some people in this community love to go out of state or really far abroad, and more power to you. And then some prefer to be close to home, like I did. And for me, that just worked out really well. And I'll talk more about getting caregivers and all that. But I was definitely looking to have something that was close and accessible, and then also that fit what I wanted to do, because I knew pretty early on I wanted to write and do something in that sphere. It's evolved a lot since then, but I never changed my major. I was very into English, creative writing, film studies, all of that. So it was a combination. I would say that, to answer the question, it was a combination of what school fit my interests and had what I wanted to do, and also was accessible enough. And I would say there's no university that is perfect in that regard, but State had what I needed. There were still obstacles, of course, but it had a really good disability services office, and I'll talk more about that later. But those were kind of the things, but it did help that I was already exposed to my school when I was still in high school.
To build off that, Kevin, I think one point you mean like that it matches your interests. I think interests and desire, or maybe excitement, is one of the most important things. Kevin's absolutely right that there is no perfect university, and whether that's accessibility or the climate or the classes that that school specializes in, you're never going to find that perfect fit. And so I think what's the most important is to find the school that you feel like you won the lottery if you got to go there, that you genuinely want to go there, because that's going to help you overcome any of those obstacles that do come up when you get there. For me, it was out of state. It was the school where all my older siblings had gone. I wanted to be there. I wanted to be with them. I wanted to get that out of state experience to know, like, is this something I can do? Like, can I live on my own? Can I leave all the support and connections of my home base and try this? So yeah, find one where you feel like you can tackle whatever is there because you really want to be there, not one that you're settling for or that you feel like it's your second or third best. Like, go for the one that you really want to go for. And the other obstacles, everything's figure outable.
About going for what fits for you best. For me, at least, and like, you guys talked about, Amber, you talked about going out of state, and for me, I kind of joke, I stayed in state, but my parents went out of state. So like in 2018, my parents moved to Utah because, there was a good opportunity for my dad there, and so they were like worried about me, and my brother who also has SMA, and I was like, I got this, so from there I just went, learned to be independent, and for me, deciding a school at that point was I wanted to stay in California because there were just so many great schools. You have the University of California system with 10 different choices to choose from. I was like, I'm going to apply to all these schools. So, I applied to UCLA, UC Irvine, UC San Diego, and a bunch of other UCs and California State Universities as well. And I got accepted to my top 3, which were UCLA, UCSD, and UCI. And people think I'm crazy when I tell them, yeah, I chose UCSD over UCLA, and people just kind of look at you sideways sometimes, like, why would you do that? It's UCLA. Like, if you get in there, like, it's, you know. But for me, it was the program I was in, I was looking at, I wanted something that really would help me grow as a designer, because that's kind of what my thing is design, and hopefully applying that for people with disabilities in software. And UCSD just had a better program. Accessibility is better too, because UCLA is a way older school, and unfortunately navigating that campus is very difficult. And that was just one thing, but I think it was really just the program. It fit me the best, and overall UCSD was just a good fit, and that's why I turned down UCLA. So
That's great. Thank you all so much. We actually have some questions that have kind of stemmed off of what you were all talking about there. Can you explain, and there are so many different emotions and thoughts with going to college, but somebody had asked, like, was it scary or hard or exciting for you to go away and be away from your parents? I mean, even if you stayed locally, but it sounds like you all really went away, you know, and just the courage to do so as an 18-year-old. Another question kind of hand in hand is, like, what did you appreciate most about going away to college? You know, just everything, all encompassing of going away to college. Do you want to go ahead and start, Kevin?
Yeah, sure. So to answer this question, so like I said, I did stay local and I lived at home throughout college, but I would say still it is a huge difference nonetheless between high school and college. Whether you're going out of state, whether you're staying at home, it still is a wildly different experience. And for me, one of the big changes was growing from elementary through high school. I always had an aide with me going around campus at all times, and so I had that help whenever I needed. In college, I had my university had a program to have student note takers for me in classes, which was a huge help. But beyond that, I did not have any aides with me going around campus or anything like that. So that was really the biggest adjustment for me. And really, I loved it. I think it was that was, you know, the biggest taste of independence, and it really helped me, especially because I went to a university with a really big campus, and especially as I got further into my college career and got more involved with stuff, particularly like for me, it was the student newspaper and then a campus ministry and a bunch of other stuff with the English program and all that. So I was not in one building all the time. I was often going across campus and getting that feel. And so I did have a service dog with me at the time, and then but a lot of times I really just made friends with a lot of people, and you know, would get help if I needed. But it was a really beneficial experience for me to just learn how to navigate just getting from place to place on my own. And I'm fortunate enough that I have the physical capacity to do that. I'm still have many limitations, but I was able to, you know, drive myself across campus and get to where I needed to be, and there was always someone around to grab doors or whatever. And then the other thing with that too, and this is something that I had to really just learn how to be proactive and to ask for help when needed, because starting in high school and then continuing in college, my arm strength deteriorated significantly. So it got to the point in college where I could not feed myself on my own or anything like that. So I had to always have someone with me to eat lunch or whatever. And so because of that, that's honestly, like, friends often, you know, joked at how everyone on campus knew me, but a lot of that was because I had to like ask for help constantly, which was a good thing. I mean, I learned how to, I mean, it was very much, even as an extrovert, it's never comfortable just asking a random stranger for help with anything beyond, like, opening a door is one thing, but when it's like, hey, can you move my arm or something like that, and having to explain to them like, hey, I can't, you know, do this. There's never a time where that's not awkward, but once you do it enough times, it just becomes second nature. And so that was a big part of it for me, even though, yeah, I was living at home and I had my parents, you know, really close by. I was still on my own a lot when I was on campus, and I had to really learn how to manage that. And but again, I loved it though. I think it was a great experience, and that's, I mean, we'll talk more about advice, I'm sure, as it goes along, but that's my biggest tidbit of advice is whatever you do when you're in college, whether you're staying at home, going far away, whatever, you have to really learn how to be proactive and how to ask for help. And once you get over those initial stigmas about that, I think it'll benefit you in the long run. Because I know for me, my college campus had the nicest people. There was rarely a time where someone, you know, like was too busy to help out or whatever. People are always willing to lend an extra hand. So that was, but yeah, so I think that answers the question. That was kind of rambling. But.
Oh, Amber, did you want to go next?
Yes, sorry.
Oh, no.
I think I love this question, and I want to pause for a minute and just say, like, we're here to answer the tough questions. So for those that are joining us live today, please feel free to ask those questions that you don't feel like you can ask anywhere else. Because to answer the question, I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified, and a big part of me thought, I'm going to go and I'm going to try this, but it really might not be for me, and I might be dropping out after my first semester or maybe after my first week and coming back home. And that's okay. If you feel nervous, if you feel scared, if you feel uncertain, nothing's gone wrong. I think that's exactly how you're supposed to feel when tackling a big decision and a big challenge like college is. College is hard for everyone, and adding SMA on top of it is just like times 10. So I felt terrified to go. And honestly, for about the first, probably my first year even, I would wake up in the morning with a little just kind of pit in my stomach, a little bit anxious, because every day is about facing the unknowns, the million little what ifs that float through your head that nobody else knows about except you. What if I get to class and my door is closed? What if I drop my keys on my way to class? What if I have to go to the bathroom super bad in the middle of the class and I don't have a caregiver with me? Okay. We, as panelists, we know what that's like. So if you have questions about that, please ask us so we can help share the information that you're looking for. So just know, like, it's okay to be scared. Do it anyway. You'll love it after you get there. It's not all fun and games, but college was truly some of the best years of so far my adult life. So it's okay to be afraid is probably what I'd like to say the most.
And actually, one thing I'll say.
Definitely agree. I mean,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kyle. No, go ahead, man.
oh, okay, thanks. Yeah, no, I mean, definitely, I think get out of your comfort zone, because I mean, that's kind of like even before UCSD, like I think a big part of it for me is that I great support from my family, because I lived at home for most of community college, as even able-bodied people do that. You know, you're there to save money and get a decent education and then finish up at university, you know, and so I think that really helped me get started and kind of get used to it. And then when the time came, you know, the last 9 months of my community college time, my parents said they were going to move out of state, and I said, you know, I'm going to stick it out. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go live on my own. I actually lived 25 minutes. I had a 25-minute commute to get to school at that point, whereas I was used to either being driven or riding paratransit. And you know, we had to figure something out for me to drive. I was moving to a more rural area, and so you know, in a matter of months, I got hand controls in my car, and I was commuting 25 minutes each way, at least 2 to 3 times a week. You know, and that, looking back, that's crazy to me. Like how quickly, like I went from, you know, relying on my parents to just going for it. You know, and it was scary, but like, you know, by the time I got to UCSD, I'd already been doing it for 9 months, probably more so, because I was driving everywhere all the time. Whereas living on campus, you know, it's a city. You don't really have to go driving anywhere if you don't feel like it. And so, you know, even if you can't drive or riding the bus, whatever it may be. But yeah, I mean, that's, you know, and I had fantastic roommates, you know, that were always, you know, great. We worked stuff out when there were issues, and that's a big thing too when you have SMA and you're living with new people who maybe don't exactly get it, is really just, get really good roommates like I did. I mean, they were kind of random, but luckily it worked out. And just kind of explain to them, what's up, this is what I deal with. And over time, like they were willing to, help me with stuff, grab stuff, something off a shelf, whatever it may be. And so, yeah, I just think it's, about just being bold, but also, knowing how to adapt, I guess, with SMA, because it's not easy, being truth being told, I face different challenges than Kevin and Amber face, and so it's up to each person. And one thing I will say too, for like for parents is, really, I've known a lot of people with SMA that are going to college, and just, be there for them, but also let them fly, like, because we're people the same as anybody else. We're all, young adults who want to go and experience life. And so I think it's, being mindful about giving them their space and letting them just flourish.
I was going to say real quick too, because we will talk a lot about, the accessible barriers you have to deal with. But one of the great things about college that I really miss is really how easy it is to meet up with people, and like the social aspect, because everyone is there right on campus. Like even if you live off campus, like you can meet up in between classes. I just love that about state, where there were coffee shops and restaurants like right across from where my classes were, and even plenty of places on campus. And so you really don't get an opportunity like that any other time in life, because once you get to adult life and working, you have to try to hang out with friends, you have to work around their schedules, they have to work around yours. It's like I just really miss the easy convenience of everyone is always there. It's really not that hard to find people to meet up with and interact, and you're always running into people. So from that aspect, like that's a really huge accessibility, a positive accessibility thing, is just how everyone is there. There's always vibrant campus life, and if you find a university that has that, it's great.
That's great. Thank you guys so much. I'm just weeding through all these questions that have come in, and there's so many questions that are addressing personal care attendants, or whether you're living in a dorm or an apartment, or just managing your personal care attendants with your college schedule. One question actually in particular that just came in said, I currently attend a community college locally, but I've always dreamed of going away to college and staying in a dorm. How did any of you guys manage this? And kind of just all encompassing of the questions of your personal care attendants and how you dealt with that, again, during classes, in your dorms, in your apartments. Do you want to go ahead and start, Kevin?
Oh yeah, so I mean, Amber and Kyle can speak more to it, because I never did dorm life. But what I did though was I started out with just my parents as my caregivers, because at that time we still didn't really know how it all worked. Just, I mean, it wasn't until a little bit later when I started getting caregivers at home, and once we got set up with different programs and stuff, what I did was I had my caregivers at home to get me up in the mornings, get me to bed at night. But then I also, through vocational rehab, I got set up with a program called iLife of North Carolina, and I would get a certain number of hours a week, and I used those hours to hire friends to drive me to and from campus. And that was great, especially because that was around my junior and senior year. And I mentioned earlier that I was active at the student newspaper, and when I was an editor there, we would have production nights going really late. And so it was great that I had a friend who, is also a student, and we're already on crazy sleep schedules anyway. So it wasn't a problem for them to pick me up at like, 10 o'clock at night or whatever, from the office and take me home. And so that worked out great. And so I had, like I said, my at-home caregivers, and then I had friends drive me to and from. And I mean, the schedule would change, but I would usually have like my mom drop me off in the mornings, and then friends pick me up. If I didn't have anything after class, I would just get picked up from class. But a lot of times I was very active on campus, and so I would be getting picked up late. And And that was great too, because like one of them was already one of my best friends since middle school. So like we already had a strong relationship. Another one who I was already like kind of friends with before, but when I had put the ad out, he applied, and he's now become one of my best friends through that experience. And so so that was just really cool too. So that was kind of how I did it. Like I said, I've never done dorm life, but also going back to what Kyle said, like my parents were very supportive of making me as independent as possible. And so, we had my space set up at home, and then they were totally comfortable with friends driving me, doing all that. They knew I'd be fine. So that's how I did it. But I'm curious to hear about you guys' dorm experiences and like the challenges and positives with that.
Yeah, first I want to say kudos to our viewer who sent in that question. I love that you have a dream and you're thinking about going for it. That is amazing. I lived in apartments that were really close on the edge of campus, and transportation was a big thing for me. I do have an adopted vehicle that I can drive by myself, and that was a big part of my feeling comfortable living away from home, was that I could transport myself to and from places in my own vehicle. So that's something to consider. If you can drive, great. If you don't have an adaptive vehicle, maybe look into that. But I think the biggest key for living in the dorms or living in an apartment on your own anywhere is your caregiving team. So I like to divide it up into categories of like my paid and hired caregivers and the army of people that love me and support me and don't ever see a dime, but I would consider them like my caregivers, okay? Build that team. That is so important. So I liked to have a combination of probably 2 or 3 hired paid caregivers. I loved to have one that was in the apartment that was a roommate. So you find one of those gems, those great people that you really mesh with, and I'd invite them to come and be my roommate and live with me. And then it just, for those evenings when you're watching that movie marathon and you want to stay up till 1 a.m., you're not texting a caregiver saying, hey, can you maybe not come till like 1 o'clock in the morning and come put me to bed? You can say, hey, paid caregiver, you take the night off. My living caregiver, she's going to put me to bed tonight. And it just, there's a lot that gets folded into your daily routine that it's just nice to have someone there that's living with you to fold it into their schedule too. And they love it. They get paid for things that they'd probably be naturally just helping you with anyway because they're a good person. They get paid for it. So 2 to 3 caregivers that are paid, that have set hours and a set schedule. But then again, those people that aren't certified, aren't paid, but I would actually tell them, like if I was starting to develop a good relationship with someone, they seemed like a kind and caring person who I could trust and depend on, I'd say, hey, I need a lot of help with a lot of different things, like going to the bathroom, picking up things. Can I count on you as someone that if I'm in a pinch, could I send you a text or call you and see if you're available to come help? And the response was almost unanimously yes. So I would just keep a list actually on my phone of my little army of supporters so that if I was stranded, those what ifs we talked about, I'm in the middle of class on campus, and I have to pee so bad, and my scheduled caregiver isn't set to come for 2 hours, I'll just start texting a list and I'll say, hey, who's nearby? Who could come help me? And it worked out really well. Another point to talk about is the accessibility of your apartment or your dorm that you do choose. I think that is important, worth doing a little bit of research and looking into all the options available so you find an apartment that is comfortable for you to be in as kind of your home base. So those are my thoughts. Kyle, what would you have to add to that?
Yeah, actually, that's great, especially talking about like what works for you and like what like having whether it's like living caregivers and also making sure your apartment is accessible. I would segue with that into talk with your disability services office right away because they are required by law to give you accommodations to make sure you have an accessible and safe place to live. And so whether that's having a living caregiver or having an automatic door, making modifications to the shower, like at UCSD, they did all that for me, and they gave me a specific apartment that was, set up to make that happen. And, they did, everything for me. And so I'd say, definitely, get on that early as soon as you're in the process of becoming a student. Yeah, and because those accommodations are going to make your living experience, nice, and not a total disaster, as, we need various things to help us live our lives. So as far as caregivers go, I don't have a ton of experience in that because I just I didn't have that many hours. I'm, like I said, I have type 3, and so when they make that determination, they're like, you need some help, but we can also see you can do a lot of things on your own. So for me, it was just like on like Saturdays, I would have a care attendant, somebody I hired come in for 8 hours to help me clean the place up and do all my chores, more or less, and that was like all the big stuff, and do dishes, whatever, because we didn't have a dishwasher, unfortunately. To your question though, you said you're in community college, which I think that's awesome. I think that's a great way to save money and kind of get a hang of things before you're going off to university. Um, you know, I've heard various people say different things, like, some people kind of bash on community college, like, oh, it's community college, but at the end of the day, when you go to university, your piece of paper is the same. Like, it's no different than the person who was there from freshman year. And so I think, that's awesome. And as far as just living on campus, I would say another big thing is, if you're probably gonna have roommates, depending where you live. If it's in California, you'll probably have like 8 people in one apartment just to afford it. But in my case, I had 3 roommates actually, and the university actually had our RA come to us. She'd make her rounds, and which is a residential advisor, the person who basically kind of makes sure everyone's behaving. They actually made us sit down with the RA, all of us together, and kind of, first couple days have a conversation about what we expect and how we want to treat each other, et cetera, and even making us have some kind of uncomfortable conversations, not gonna lie. And so I think, that's a good opportunity early on to just, sit down with roommates and say, hey, this is what I got going, and, would you guys be able to help me with this thing, or these basic things, or if you need more, hire them as a caregiver. And so, yeah, I just think it's about having, good communication with those around you really makes the process a lot easier, especially when you have SMA and, you have other needs you have to deal with. I was also told, kind of a side note, I was told somebody was wanting to know again what my major was. My major is cognitive science, specializing in design and interaction. And there's various names for this, but basically it's generally known as human-computer interaction at other universities. So basically, I'll explain again, that's sort of like kind of where you basically are designing software, not necessarily coding it, but you're kind of designing it and making it easier to use for people. And so, yeah, that's more or less what it is. If you have questions about it after, feel free to ask me. I might drop my email as well if anybody wants to ask me further about that.
Great, thank you guys so much. We've actually gotten so many questions that have been coming in, which is so great. But I wanted to address this one really quick on the personal care attendants. Is somebody had asked, how did you fund your personal care attendants? Did you get community-based waivers, vocational rehab, and how did you source them as well? How do you help find them when you're in college? If you want to address that first, I don't know, Kevin, you wanted to start?
Yeah, sure. Well, also I want to say to Amber's point earlier, like the whole like army of caregivers, both paid and unpaid, that applies to life during and after college, because I have multiple friends who know how to empty my catheter, and I pay them in lunches and I get them into movies and Comic Cons for free. So, but yeah, as far as mine, so I still get as far as my full-time caregivers that are at home. And I get right now it's like 42 hours a week. It was more like that's kind of what Kyle said earlier about he touched on they determine on how much you need and other factors too. But I remember like when I started, before I turned 21, the program I was on gave me more hours, and then they cut them short. They cut the hours once I turned 21, and I could rant about the government all day and get into the BS reasons for why they do that. But anyway, I have had all my caregivers primarily through government agencies and services, and I would just use whatever I got, and then we would also supplement if like for instance, my longtime caregiver who recently left but was with me for 7 years, I paid him a lot extra once I started working. But in college, we just used whatever government services, so through Medicaid, and then I mentioned iLife of North Carolina, which was set up through vocational rehab. And like Kyle said earlier, these are all questions to ask your disability services office, because they were the ones who directed me to vocational rehab, and I'll always be grateful for that because they help with tuition, caregivers, all of that. So definitely, and it is different in each state. So you have to kind of look at what they'll give you and what they won't, but they're bound to give you something. So take whatever you can get government wise, and then if you're wanting more hours and you have the means to pay additionally, then go for it. It's a hard question to answer because everyone's situation is totally different. But that would be my best advice: is go get set up with the vocational rehab, take whatever they'll give you, and then if you're on Medicaid or anything like that, take whatever hours you do get, and whether you want to go through an agency to find people or find on your own, you just have to decide that. But yeah, usually it's a mix though of taking whatever government services they'll provide you with, and then also supplementing it with if you want to pay people extra out of pocket, you can certainly do that if you have the means.
And I love this because we have such a rich like mixture of our methods between all of us. So I do receive funding from my community like waiver program, my Medicaid waiver program that I got on as a child and continued through my adult years, which, as a side note, if you live in state and then you're thinking about going to school out of state, make sure that you are not jeopardizing your funding, that you maintain your residency in the state that you live. Very important. I would make extra trips back home. I'd come home for the holidays. I'd come home during my off track to make sure that I was still qualifying for my funding, because that's kind of our lifeline. So then I would use the money that the waiver program gave me. I've never gone through government agencies to find people. I'm kind of picky about who I want in that personal aspect of my life. So I did personal sourcing. I went on social media and I would just make Facebook posts saying, hey, Idaho friends, hey, Wyoming friends, I'm looking to hire this person. Help me out. There's no qualifications necessary. I'll give you all the training, and I'm really fun to work with. So let me know if you're interested. And people would just share it and the word would get around. And I was able to interview people myself, hire them, train them. And I like that because then I am the employer and I get to call the shots. If you work through a government agency, the pros there is that they will always provide someone for you. You need someone, they're going to say, here's the person. But if you want your own caregivers where you're saying these are my terms of working for me, then you want to find them personally yourself. So there's pros and cons to both, but I just recommend trying all avenues and seeing what works for you. Word of mouth. I know people post ads on places like Indeed and places like that that help you find people that are looking for work. Another great idea is if you're at a college where there's a nursing program or like a physical therapy program or something like that, go and talk to the professors, go and talk to the program heads and say, hey, I'm looking to hire people that would give your students real world, real life experience in this job. Can I put a little note up on your whiteboard, or would you mind sending an email to your student list saying we have this job opportunity in this line of study? Another great way to find some people that are anxious for that line of work. One good trick I found.
Yeah, I would say for me, finding them, well, so my first one when I was living on my own, Boston Community College, I was renting a room from a lady and she actually offered to be my caregiver. So that worked out great, because she was only, she was mostly retired and kind of, part-time for her existing job. So she was home a lot, and so that worked out great for me. The funding was through In-Home Supportive Services, which is the state of California's Medicaid in-home care program, more or less. So that worked out great. And then when I went to UCSD and lived on campus, they have a provider database of like providers they have in your area that are just like register with them. They've done the background check, all that. And you'll hear various things. Some people say they've had an awful time with it. A lady I finally got a hold of off that list, she worked out great. She helped me get all my stuff done on Saturdays I needed help with. As I've heard from others, there's things like care.com, Craigslist, which is kind of an outdated method of doing things and maybe not the safest. But yeah, that sort of thing. So again, like I said, I don't have that much experience with in-home care. So, that's all I really have to say about is, with my experience.
Great.
And also, college campuses are a great place to look for people, because I'm right now, like what Amber was saying earlier about the difference between government agencies and then finding your on your own. I've done both. I'm now in the latter. Still hours coming through Medicaid, but I'm with a program that allows me to hire whoever I want. And the first person who applied was a grad student, actually at my alma mater, who is just looking for some part-time work. And it's just, those are kind of ideal people because they're looking for experience and they're often more flexible. And so it's a great place to put ads out. Especially if your school has a nursing program or a CNA program or whatever, like just email your ad to them and they'll advertise for you.
Great, thank you. So we've received so many questions, and this one question actually addresses 3 completely different topics, and I'm just going to go ahead and keep them all together and ask you, and then each of you can address, with whatever you wish of the 3 topics, or all 3 of them, or the mix of them. So this first one is, what did you do if you had to use the bathroom and didn't have an aide there for you? The next question is, which we actually have received many of these questions, I know at QSMA before. Did you ever go out and drink when you were in college and like crash your chair or get into any trouble? And then another question is, what did you do if your chair did break down when you were at school? So 3 very different questions, but all 3 very good questions. So Kevin, if you want to go ahead and start.
I'd say I'm glad my parents aren't watching this one, but let's see. Okay, bathroom wise, well, I mentioned earlier, so this some guys can do, but I wear an external condom catheter, so I was pretty good on that area. And I did train both like the friends that I hired as caregivers how to empty it, and then I would also, if I needed to, like just train a friend too. If I had to actually go number 2, obviously, then I would have to be at home. But I rarely ran into that situation. I was pretty good about, going at home when I needed to and just kind of managing best I could. Drinking wise, I never got, of course I did. But I never, that would be pretty funny if I ever got into a situation where it was like actual drunk driving and the chair broke down or something like that. I never ran into that. I did get drunk on like my 22nd birthday. But nothing crazy happened, or at least that I remember. But yeah, I was not a big partier or anything by any means, but went to a few here and there, and of course, had to be accessible. But I don't know, that would be pretty funny if I heard any stories like that. But no, I don't have any iconic drunk stories, I would say. But it's, but advice there is like, yeah, obviously don't feel pressured to. It's not like essential to the college experience, but if you want to do that, if you want to get a taste of that, don't let disability stop you there. There are plenty of wheelchair users who go to parties and do all that. So it's whatever you're interested in there. But yeah, I don't have any like wild stories there.
I'll chime in next. For the bathroom question, I think it's important to identify ahead of time maybe what your boundaries are and what you're comfortable with. I am not comfortable asking a random stranger to help me go to the bathroom. Some people are. I am not. But just kind of spend some time thinking about what am I okay with? If I'm really in emergency, how far am I willing to go? Because you will be in situations that will stretch your limits. And practice flexibility. That's a good thing. The best thing that I did for my health up at school was scheduling in extra bathroom breaks. We are the kings and queens of holding our bladders and depriving, we don't drink as much water as we should because of the difficulties going to the bathroom. And it felt like a luxury for me. I didn't do this till my last, I think, 2 years of college, but I would schedule in with my paid caregivers extra bathroom breaks. So I'd say, I want you to meet me on campus in between two classes at 11 o'clock in the morning. Even though I probably could make it till lunchtime, I know that then I could drink an extra water bottle if I wanted to, because I had the option to go to the bathroom. So if you had paid caregivers, something to consider. If not, call on your army of friends and helpers and say, hey, does anyone have a class in this building at this time? Could you just meet me at the bathrooms regularly? I'll train you how to help me. And I cannot recommend enough. Plan in some extra breaks. Then you don't feel like an imposition. You're not in crisis mode. For the drinking, I don't drink for religious purposes. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So I've never had a drop of alcohol in my life, so I'll let Kevin and Kyle tell you all their crazy stories. I did, though, completely crash and destroy my wheelchair one time. We actually had a flood in Idaho, and I was at a late night rehearsal for a choir performance, and it was flooding. And in order to get to my vehicle, the sidewalk like dipped down and it was flooding. And so I couldn't see that it dipped down. I was like, oh, that's like a 2-inch puddle. I can make it through that. And I got halfway through the puddle and the water was up to my calves in my wheelchair. So pretty much I'd completely submerged the bottom half of my wheelchair in water and I fried my electronics. So my wheelchair was out of commission for, I think, 3 or 4 days while we dried it out and repaired some wires and made the necessary changes. So again, that's a good opportunity to practice that flexibility I mentioned earlier. I had to go around in my manual wheelchair for a couple days, which I cannot push myself. So my caregivers had to go everywhere with me. It was a very challenging 3 or 4 days. So just know that like crazy things are going to happen. Maybe not floods, but weird things happen that demand that you just kind of roll with the flow a little bit, which we're all really good at. You're probably already a champ at, but have those backup plans in place. Bring your manual wheelchair with you to college and just know that there are going to be circumstances that demand some creativity, and that's okay.
Yeah. So for me, let's see, first question. I use a restroom independently, so I can't really speak to the first question about using the restroom, like needing help, because I don't. But as far as getting drunk and crashing my wheelchair, never had any crashes, but I think it's also just about knowing your limits too. And I actually have a great story about knowing your limits and getting yourself into a bit of a pickle due to SMA. So this was mainly in community college. Like by the time I went to UCSD, like I wasn't really partying. Academics are harder, and like I would go. The area I lived in, there was a lot of kickbacks and some parties, and I would just go around Saturday nights and just hang out, see who's doing what, play like Super Smash or something, and maybe have a beer. But when I was in community college and I was living on my own at this point, I decided to go to my favorite brewery and maybe let loose a little too much, and to the point that I couldn't drive my vehicle home, and I knew it. So what I did was I was like, okay, I can't drive home. So but I was like, I can't call an Uber. There's no wheelchair accessible Ubers aren't a thing like almost anywhere. Like most people, they just like, oh, I'll just call an Uber and get my car tomorrow. I couldn't do that. So how do I get me and my wheelchair home? And basically I had to have some strangers there. They offered like, dude, you can't drive. I'm like, yeah, I know. And so they're like, they offered to drive me home, and I was like, oh man, I'm gonna have strangers drive me home middle of the night. I lived out in a rural area, like 1 in the morning. I'm like, I guess so. So luckily I made it home in one piece, but in hindsight, I was looking back, I was just like, I don't want to do that again because you never know what kind of you're putting your life in the hand of strangers, and so I think that was kind of my lesson with that. You know, when you're driving yourself, and you you better have a plan. So, but yeah, know your limits. And have I ever destroyed? Well, I guess have I ever had any issues with my chair while I was at college? Put out of commission? No. I usually got maintenance pretty regularly on my chair, so I think that's a big thing. Stay up on your chair maintenance. Don't let it break until it's too late. That's that's how you're gonna get around, and it's already stressful enough dealing with college and everything. So just stay up in your chair maintenance, and if something happens, make sure to call your chair repair person to get out there, try to fix it, and etc.
And to add on that, if you do go out of state or you go somewhere new, even just like a new place in your city, find the maintenance people near you. That was challenging for me to find the people that could work on my wheelchair out in a different state. So just something to be aware of.
That's all such great advice. Thank you all so much. It's so hard even choosing questions because there's been so many great ones that have come in here. But if you could go through and just address any accommodations that you would recommend, maybe that you had or that you recommend, or another question was any difficulties that you had to address during college or the hardest part of college. If you don't mind just, talking about any accommodations and then any difficulties that you want to address. Kevin, do you want to start again?
Yeah, so I think we all mentioned talking to your disability services office at your university, and like anything, it's going to be different on each campus, but that's the best place to start. See what services they can provide. Again, for me, the biggest help they had was providing note takers for me in class. That was a huge help, and I didn't need them for every course because, especially for like my creative writing classes or something like that weren't lecture driven, I didn't really need them. But for any of the especially like GEDs or lecture ones or anything like that, that was extremely helpful to have there. So they would just show up in class, and a lot of times it was grad students, and some I got to be friends with and got to know really well, and so that was really helpful. Again, and going back to earlier, as far they had the class ones, but I didn't really have any aides with me around campus, and for the most part I was fine getting around campus by myself. But one thing I'll mention is, depending on where you are, weather is something to consider, because most of the time I was fine, but when it got to the colder months, that is one thing I don't miss about that, because I especially remember there one day I didn't even have to go that far. I was just going from like the building I was in to a bagel shop I went to regularly that was right across the street, and I thought my hand was going to fall off because it was freezing. And so in those scenarios, make sure someone is with you, because in warm weather and that kind of thing, I was fine going across campus by myself. Obviously I had to make sure I wasn't too tired or anything, but in most cases I was good to go there. But in the colder weather, I had to really make sure someone was there with me, in case, because I don't remember having any chair issues, but that's when I would get stuck, is if like my hand got so cold I couldn't drive any further. So those are things to look out for. But yeah, but accommodations are going to be different for each person depending on what you need, and also they're going to be different at different universities. So but definitely start with the DSO office and go from there. And I was also able to take exams there and get extended time, so that was a lot of help too.
Yeah, mine are similar to Kevin's. Extended test time, delayed due dates, very, very nice if you get sick, and extra sick days. I guess my advice would be, I was surprised at what I could actually ask for. I thought like, oh, this is college, like teachers aren't flexible, professors won't give you very much wiggle room, but I found that they were a lot more willing to give me that wiggle room if I had identified the need up front. So then I wasn't calling them saying, hey, I'm sick today, I can't make it to class, what can you do? Have that conversation with them up front, both through, like Kevin said, the disability center, the resource office so that you're getting like the appropriate authorized channels to request for accommodations. And then I'd work the back end channels. I'd meet with my professors one-on-one before the semester and say, hey, this is me. I'm a hardworking, very diligent, very dedicated student, but here's my reality that I'm going to need some extra help. I get sick more often. When I do get sick, I stay sick for longer. So I might need some extra help. And then when those sick days did come and I'd say, this is one of those moments I told you about, how can you help me out? They were very willing to accommodate my needs because I'd proven that I was a dedicated student and wasn't just looking for the easy way out or the, grace period at the end because I'd slacked off. I think if you work with them, they will work with you.
Yeah, no, those are both great. I think so. Like for me, the big accommodations I got, and like Amber said, they vary person to person. Just ask for what you need. Like worst they're gonna say is no. Like if they can't justify it, etc. But obviously, the accommodations have to be reasonable, and it may be some things that you might not think are reasonable might actually be in the eyes of the university. So for me, like there was kind of two sets of accommodations. There was the classroom accommodations, and then the housing accommodations. So the classroom accommodations were like the note takers, which are usually peers that you can usually ask to be your note taker, classmates. There were like double time, extra time on exams because it takes you longer to write or think or whatever. And another big one for me was I can ask the professor for an extra 48 hours to complete an assignment. That came in very handy as SMA can bring a lot of fatigue, and fatigue is probably my biggest weakness with SMA is, is just a lot of days where I'm just down and out and I'm not doing anything, and so just communicating with your professors. And that's another thing is like, this is something everybody faces, SMA or not, is talking to your professors. Your professors are people, they aren't unapproachable. They aren't going to, bite if you get close to them. Especially at universities when you're in these huge classrooms, these huge auditoriums, it's really intimidating going down to the front after class talking to your professor. They're people, they're cool, you're cool with them, they're going to be cool with you. Just talk to them about your accommodations, etc. Go to office hours, that's another big one. Go to office hours if you talk to them about anything. Pretty much every school I've been to, they have to have, at least an hour or two of office hours to talk to them about any of your concerns. And then there's housing accommodations. I mentioned that before, like I said. I got like an automated door, a shower bench installed. I got to bring my own bed, all that sort of thing. So, it's a lot of work, but just that's why you get started early and, get all that stuff you need. And then I wasn't really ever in any, like, I think the second question was about being in bad situations while I was there. And honestly, it went pretty smooth. My car never broke down, my chair never broke down. So yeah, I will say that if you don't want to freeze like Kevin, come to California. It's 65 year round.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. One other question is, what's one thing that each of you would have changed or done differently if you could go back to college now? I know that's a hard one. Kevin, do you want to start?
I will say, so especially like junior year, I was notorious for packing too much on my plate, not academics wise, like everything outside academics. So mentioned I was very involved with student newspaper. I would never change that by any means, don't get me wrong, but also looking back, I feel like the only semester I did really well academically was in my final one, when I wasn't on any like leadership roles or doing a bunch of stuff, extracurriculars. I would say definitely do extracurriculars, do the things you're passionate about. Like I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't done those things, but also I did not have as much of a balance as I should have. And I was also notorious for not putting any effort into classes I didn't care about. So like I said, I knew kind of what I wanted to do, but so I was great at English classes and stuff like that. But GEDs and a bunch of other stuff, I was like, forget it. And so I wish I'd put a little more effort there and just had more of a balance. And because college really is just like one of the best times, and really enjoy every moment. And if that means, spreading it out more, that's the other thing. You don't have to finish in 4 years. I did an extra semester. I know tons of people who took much longer than that, and do it at your own pace. There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, that would be my thing. Is I'm incredibly grateful for the things I did, like student newspaper, campus ministry. I did like a short film contest a few years in a row, stuff like that. I loved all of those things, but also there were times where I was just getting by, like doing everything and not doing as well at certain things, especially academics, as I could have done. And so just having that balance is really important.
It's so interesting that you say that, Kevin, because mine is going to be the exact opposite. If I could go back, I wish that I would have had a little bit more fun, done more of the social extracurricular things, and not sweated the the grades and academics as much. Like, recognize that that's your purpose. That's why you're there. But it's also a very unique time of your life that you don't really get to duplicate anywhere else. The college experience truly is an experience for lots of different reasons. So I would also echo another thing that Kevin said of don't put a timeline on your experience. I did college over like 7 years because a full load was not a happy place for me. And I wish I had adopted that mentality a little bit sooner of like maybe 10 or 11 credits is happy for me. So yeah, throw the timeline out the window. You do you. Enjoy the experience. Have fun.
Yeah, no, definitely. Boy, I have a lot to say on this because my university experience was right in the middle of COVID. So, well, to start, I started college in 2014, and I was in community college till 2019. So I did 5 years there in a 2-year university. But in hindsight, I'm okay with that because for me, well, one, I graduated high school. I got out of high school early when I was 16, so I felt like I had time, just to figure things out, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I just kind of took it easy, and there were times I would drop classes, but ultimately I made it out and graduated university at 23 years old, so I'd say I'm age-wise not doing too bad. And again, but at the same time, it's not a race either. Like there are people who go back in late 20s or 30s. That's just my personal thing. Is I just kind of wanted to like kind of wrap it up, because it just feels good to kind of have your clear road right in front of you. But again, like I took 7 years to do that. If I had to change anything though, I would say with COVID, like I was at UCSD from fall 2019 until we all know March 2020. We didn't know what the heck was going on. Everything was shutting down. And they gave us the option to leave UCSD. No, we can get our rent money back, all that. And at first I was like, nah, no way, I'm not gonna do that. But then my roommate said, well, one by one, or at least 2 of the 3 of them, were like, no, I think I'm gonna get out of here. And then I'm like, oh man, they're leaving. So I was just like, yeah, I'm getting out of here because I was in San Diego, I was in a big city. I figured if COVID's gonna spread, that's the last place I want to be. So I went up to Utah, lived with my parents, and then here this last June they moved to Idaho. So I'm up here in Idaho with them until I can get a job, hopefully back in San Diego. So I think biggest thing I would change is, when it came back like around like fall 2020, I had the option. I was planning to go back to live on campus, and I kind of just put through that one to the side, the last minute, because they were just adding new restrictions, like wearing a mask in your apartment, that sort of thing. And I thought that was just a bit too much. And I think I just let fear take hold of me there. And, I should have just stuck it out like I always had. And so, even though it would have been the best college experience, I feel like it would have been a little more something. And so I think that's what I kind of wish I would have done, just so I could say I got to experience just a little more. But, you know, at the same time, the past is the past, and, you know, I'm moving on. I'm trying to get a job in my field right now, and, you know, there's a lot of good things to come after college.
Great, thank you so much. I have one actual final question that I always like to end these panels with. Is there so many parents that are on this right now? There are so many high school students and college students listening in for advice as well. Do you have any final closing advice for all of them? And we'll go ahead and start with Kevin.
So I would say to parents, you know, like if your kid does want to go out of state, don't freak out right away, because as we said here, like it is possible, whether they want to do that, whether they want to stay close to home. All of these things are possible. It's ultimately a matter of like, what do they want to do? And also I would say too, if you're a high schooler watching this and like you're still deciding whether college is the right option for you or not, it may not be, and that's okay. You know, like there are many different paths you can take. So to all of this, whether it's, you know, deciding which path you want to take, whether it's college or something else, or whether it's like what major to go for, all these things, it's really just, I know this isn't really that helpful, but like it's just finding out your own path and figuring out, okay, what are you passionate about? What do you want to do? But don't go the route of, oh, I think this will make me the most money, or I think this is the safest route. Don't have that in mind. Because this is like the time in your life to go for what you want to do and experiment and just see where it takes you. And so I would say put that in the front of your mind, and all of the obstacles that will come your way, as we've proven here, like there are ways around those. So just focus on what you're passionate about and go for it, and everything else will come into place.
Amen. Man, good words, Kevin. I want to speak to all the mama bears out there that you love your child and you have protected them fiercely for their whole life. And that's been your job, to keep us safe, to keep us healthy, to remove a lot of the obstacles that was in front of us at the different kind of milestones in our life. So I just want to take a moment to honor and recognize all of you out there for the amazing job that you do as our parents. You're the reason why people like Kevin and Kyle and myself, we can even consider challenges like going to college, out of state, in state, community, whatever it may be. You are the ones that raised us and got us here and taught us how to overcome those obstacles. Now it might be time to step back a little bit and let us face this new chapter kind of a little bit more on our own, and that's okay. That it's not that you're done doing anything wrong, that you're not going to lose the connection and relationship that you have with your child, that it's a really important step that we learn how to navigate this next chapter as adults with maybe a little bit less hands-on support from the amazing moms and dads out there. So the people thinking about college or in college right now and just trying to navigate it, I'd say again, practice flexibility. Just recognize that expectations are a lot of what get in the way of our happiness and enjoying the experience. Having an expectation that it's going to go a certain way, you're going to look or feel a certain way, you're going to finish in this much time. Just let go of those. Embrace where you are right now. And I'd just like to add that if you have more questions, anyone here listening tonight, we're here as a resource. So myself personally, please reach out to CureSMA if you'd like to contact and connect with us further. They can provide you with our contact information. If you have more questions or would like to have maybe just more of a in-depth conversation about a specific aspect or challenge that you are facing, I would love to connect with anyone further to see if we can help and kind of brainstorm whatever you're facing.
Yeah, I would say, as my final words of advice, I guess I would say just, especially for those of you with SMA who want to go forward and go to college, and again, maybe if that's what you want to do, I would say really just go forward and be fearless. You know, there's obviously, it's not to say you're not gonna be scared at times. There's it's being an adult, you know, moving towards adulthood in general, a scary experience, and going to live on your own, etc. Is especially. So I would say just embrace new experiences and be willing to push boundaries, but also, you know, don't be afraid to know what you need, ask for help when you need it, you know, and even if you're, you know, I encourage everyone to be independent. Don't forget your parents are still your parents, and they're never more than a phone call away, I'm sure. So that's what I would say, is just, you know, go forward, live your life. And like Kevin said, it's not necessarily just about the money. I mean, obviously you want to do something you can make a good living with, but, you know, do what you love, you know, I mean, because you got one life, and like, you only have so many years of it, like, make the best of it.
Wow, thank you so much, Kevin, Amber, and Kyle. This was such an insightful, informative, great conversation that we had tonight. We just really appreciate all of your honesty, transparency, and your inspirational words that we're leaving on. So thank you again, and thank you to all of our attendees that joined us. You'll all be receiving a follow-up email that'll have a survey link, and we'd love to hear your feedback, so please do share. And then again, we're so thankful for the incredible support for our presenting sponsor, Genentech, who makes this college panel webinar series possible. And as you see, we will be having one more college panel this year. So if you're interested, make sure to go to QRSMA's website and register for the next event on November 29th. And as Amber mentioned, if you have any follow-up questions or want to connect with these panelists, please reach out to the Community Support Department at communitysupport@cursma.org. Thank you so much again, Kevin, Amber, and Kyle, and have a great night, everyone.